Hello and welcome to the Horti-Culturalists. I'm Stephen Ryan.
And I'm Matthew Lucas.
And we post a video every Friday, so why not subscribe and press the alert button so that you can keep up with our adventures.
Do, and remember that Mr. Ryan is your resource for horticultural questions. So if you've got a question, put it in the comments below and we will answer them every Monday in our shorts.
Yes, what a good idea.
What a good idea. The sun is shining, it's bleak midwinter, Stephen.
It's
what
quite hot.
Oh, hang on. I was about to ask you what we're doing, but actually, Stephen, I'm going to tell you what we're doing.
Oh, fantastic. So where are we going and what are we doing?
Well, Stephen, a bit of role reversal, although not quite. Both of us travelled earlier in the year.
Yep.
You went to Europe, to France, Britain and Romania.
Yep.
So we've got some little films about those. And I also went to the States and I was in Miami and I was in New York. So we've got a few stories from both of those places.
We're such international travellers.
We are such globetrotters. And so today we are going to head to Manhattan and to the north of Manhattan Island in New York to the wonderful Cloister Gardens at the Metropolitan Museum's annex in the Cloister.
Fantastic. Now that's a place I've always wanted to be, so I am now seriously jealous.
Have you been to New York?
Yes, but I didn't, for whatever reason, manage to get there. So,
Well, interestingly, I lived in New York for 6 years, never went to the Cloisters, went to the Met all the time, but never the Cloisters. It's just at the top of the subway, so it's easy to get to. Anyway.
Oh, well, maybe next time.
We'll get to the hows and wherefores in a minute, but here's some footage just of the Cloisters in New York, and it's set in what is claimed to be a remnant of the original forest that covered Manhattan Island.
Right. So, and it is a reproduction, I guess, although a lot of the materials are original, but a reproduction of an original European cloister type garden.
The garden, yes. The Cloisters itself is a bunch of, I guess, architectural fragments or pieces of buildings that were collected and by various people, but J.D. Rockefeller put it all together, donated the land and the money to get the place built and established in, I think it opened in the late 30s, 1938. And part of that was about those traditional gardens. Now, because I'd never been, I didn't realise just how poetically beautiful it is. You've been to lots of cloister gardens.
Yes, authentic ones in Europe. Yes, I have in fact done a lot of those.
So, little bit of the history then, the Cloister Garden 101, Mr. Ryan.
All right, well, cloister gardens were obviously gardens that were developed in monasteries and nunneries, places where people of religion lived. They were the educated people, so they knew Latin, they knew about plants, and so they were the ones that grew the medicinal herbs and plants that people needed for their day-to-day existence. And cloister gardens were almost formatted in a way, in the same way. So they were generally rectangular in form or square. They had cross-shaped paths that ran to the centre. They'd nearly always have a water feature or something in the middle of the garden. And then the beds were planted up with all of the plants that they would need for medicinal purposes, for flavourings, and of course flowers so that they could decorate the altars of their churches. So that's where cloister gardens started, and it was sort of an early form of gardening, in fact.
Interesting, because I'd never been there. And although obviously the Cloisters Gallery in New York isn't a religious building and never had that history, but obviously all the elements and the architectural fragments and the objects in there it is so serene. It's full of birdsong. It's in a very quiet part of Manhattan, just overlooking the Hudson River. So it is very, very serene. So a few things really struck me. One was that contained nature. So I love a courtyard garden. And to your point, there was a central axis and in the middle was this beautiful old capitol. Then either side of it were 4 beds with these incredible quince trees. And I was very fortunate because the gardeners were there.
Fantastic.
I noticed, firstly, these trees were relatively small, but they were very sculpturally beautiful. And I noticed, as you can see here, rocks hanging from these trees. And I thought, maybe it's a leftover of some Japanese installation because it looked kind of Japanese. And I was asking the gardener there and she said, no, when she took over managing the Cloister Gardens, they were using nylon twine and, classic hardware store gardening equipment. And it looked really ugly in the garden. It was bright yellow or bright blue. So her idea was to how would you say, twist these trees into the shapes that she wanted to sculpt them, she would have to weigh down the branches. And so she used rock with twine. And her philosophy was, by the time the twine had rotted and the rock fell to the ground, very natural, and they're not big rocks, they're the size smaller than a hand, that by the time it rotted and fell, the branch would be stuck or fixed in its place.
Yeah, it should, because it normally takes about 12 to 18 months for a branch to stay in place that you've manipulated, whether you've staked it upright or whether you're pulling it down, whatever you're doing to that branch. It normally takes that long for the wood to lignify and become firm. So that's how it works.
Is there a name for that, or is that just torture?
No, it's manipulating plant material. I mean, and we do it all the time. I think people sometimes worry about whether they're hurting a plant by doing these sorts of things. But in fact, all they're doing is just managing it and growing it the way they want it to be. The plant doesn't care. So it's not torture. And I would see it probably as reasonably high-end horticultural management. And so you end up with a tree that's far more aesthetically beautiful than you would have if you just let nature take its course.
Well, these trees were, and it's not a huge space, but you do get a sense of space in this square. But those trees really grounded, although they're not particularly tall.
No, well, quince trees never really are all that tall.
No, but absolutely stunning. The other thing then that struck me, which I just loved, so obviously it's a cloister. There's a cloister around the edge with a raised sort of, I don't know what we're going to call it, platform, ledge. It's like a very deep sill. And on it, all of these plant pots. And it just reminded me of Italian Renaissance paintings where you'd see a pot with a lily or an iris or carnations in those sort of Renaissance paintings.
And in fact, the cloister gardens did use a lot of pots as well. And those ledges were often used for that very purpose that the ones in New York are being used for, because it was a way of managing and containing plants in a way that you could then use them. And they also became aesthetically interesting. I know some of the cloister style gardens I see in France, they have those bizarre bay trees clipped into balls, but their trunks have been curled. So you've got this strange thing. And of course the French are all into their aesthetic. So it's all about being artistic and aesthetic. I'm not sure about trees that have twisty stems, I have to say.
No.
But I've seen that sort of treatment done quite a lot. So there's a whole range of interesting ways of manipulating plant material, and growing things in pots dates back centuries. So there you go.
Well, I'm a pot grower, and all I need now is a deep medieval ledge, and I'm set.
All right, well, let's see if we can't get you one.
So then I guess the other thing about this garden was they were trying to use plants that would have been grown in that sort of a garden in Europe, and they were all, it was very beautiful. It's aesthetically very pleasing, but they were all practical.
Oh, yes. So they're obviously trying to do a proper cloister garden. I mean, you could make a simulation of it and just use ordinary plants of day-to-day gardening. But if you really want to have an authentic garden, then you have to have plants that are used for medicine. So there was any number of medicinal plants I'm sure that they've used in the garden there. You would have to have plants that were used for dyeing and what have you.
Well, interestingly, I think this is woad that we're looking at now. The other thing that really amazed me was flax. Now, forgive me, Stephen Ryan, I thought flax, which you'd weave the
linen
textile from, was a reed.
No.
Oh no, look at this little furry thing.
Yeah, they are. They're little, it's an annual. It grows probably to about 1/2 metre tall. And in fact, when we go to northwest France, we actually drive through the flax fields there. And when it's in bloom, the whole field turns this amazing sky blue because the flowers are just the most exquisite blue.
Wow. So I still then don't know where the fibre comes from.
If fibre comes from the stems.
But it's such a small plant.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that long.
Well, there you go.
And of course, in Australia, we think of flax and we think of the New Zealand flax, which is this great big clumpy thing, which at some point or another, it was thought would be a useful plant to make textiles and other things out of. And of course the natives from New Zealand in fact did do all those sorts of things, but it was a fairly rough and ready sort of material, so it didn't make a fine material like linen. And of course the other thing with flax is that they not only get the fibres for linen, but they also get flaxseed oil as well. So you get
Right. I didn't realise that was the same thing.
Yeah, it's from the same plant. So there you go. Hence great big fields of it in Europe because it's a very, very useful plant.
There you go. Now, it's a European native, is it?
Yep.
Right.
Definitely.
The other thing that there was a lot of was these beautiful Aquilegias. Now, I know there's North American Aquilegia species, but also European ones.
Oh, yes.
Why would that have been in the herb garden of the cloister garden.
All right, well, not that they're considered to be useful medically these days. In fact, it's recommended you do not
Consume
Aquilegias. But they did have medical use way back. Whether it was actually affectatious or not is another thing, but they were considered to be a plant of medical importance.
Yeah.
So, as were peonies, as were lots and lots of things that we see as garden flowers now, they actually came into cultivation as medicinal herbs.
Interesting, because it's very beautiful. And actually, the room sort of next to the herb cloister garden is full of medieval tapestries. So what was intriguing for me was seeing these tapestries from, in some cases, the 15th century, all woven with images of the plants that you were seeing. So you can see carnations, you can see lilies, you can see iris and wild strawberry. And there was strawberry in the cloister garden. It was all very Dürer-esque. It was really, really beautiful. Just great to see that juxtaposition. The other thing that I loved was the hop. So you can see here, they were growing hops on this beautiful support structure of rope, which was really elegant and very natural. Their whole thing is to try and keep all the materiality in that garden natural. So they're weaving willow supports and little fences.
Exactly what would have been done.
Using the rocks and twine, which was so beautiful to see. But I loved how this hop was growing. Now, you have got your mad golden hop over here.
Yes, I have. In fact, it needs a little bit of work and attention probably over the next few weeks, as in holding it back because it's dormant at the moment. Now is the time for me to get in and actually remove rhizomes that are sort of wafting off in areas where I don't want them. So, so that's the next job.
So, which I didn't know. So a hop is a perennial.
Yes, so it's a herbaceous perennial. They can get 3-4 metres or more long in a growing season. And so they actually make a really useful passive solar plant in a garden because in the winter you cut them right down to ground level, so they're just not there. So it lets all the winter sun in, and because they grow quite rapidly, by the time the sun gets reasonably warm in the late spring, they're already starting to get well up on their supports. And so by midsummer you've got this fabulous shady arbour or whatever that you're growing your hops on. And of course you can utilise the hops in lots of different ways. You can make your own beer if you have the wish. But of course from an ornamental perspective they can be very, very useful.
And yours is golden, this one is traditional green. Whenever I've come across a hop, not particularly this one, I don't think it was mature enough at that point, you do smell, it does smell of beer.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the whole point, yes.
So I guess if you're going to use it decoratively, bear that in mind, it does smell a bit boozy.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful to see. Now, the other thing I loved about the herb cloister gardens, actually 2 cloister gardens at the cloisters, one is more decorative, this was the herb one, was that the gardeners were there, but I noticed this incredible espalier. There was 2 espaliered pear trees. And I was talking to the gardener who had talked to me about the rocks, and she said, oh, the arborist is here, go and talk to her.
Oh, fantastic.
So I introduced myself to Fran. Here she is.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Fran. I am known as the tree lady, and I am the arborist who takes care of the trees at the cloisters. A great honor.
It was quite famous, it seems, in New York State. So she's kind of the arborist at the stars, I think. And she was just explaining to me what she was doing and how long it had taken. So the specimen that we can see here was long established in the garden. I love how it's planted in this niche, but when she came to the gardens, it had been left to its own devices, it had fallen forward.
Oh dear, yes.
So she had pinned it back, she had dealt with the soil, she had pruned it quite hard, and then prunes it twice a year, sort of beginning and the end of the season, I think. And it looks absolutely incredible. Now, I've never been a fan, really, of espalier, like bonsai. Anyway, I don't know, Fran just convinced me otherwise.
Well, I have to say, espalier is an art form, as is bonsai and as is many of the other things that we do in horticulture. It dates back a long way. I know if you look at Philip Miller's book on garden management that was written in 1670-ish, he will give you ideas on different espalier things. So it goes back a long, long way. And in Europe, it was often used not just to keep plants contained, but also to grow them against warm walls so that they would actually ripen the fruit properly. So many trees did not do well as a freestanding standing tree in England, parts of Europe, of course, as well. And so by espaliering them against a wall that faced into the afternoon sun, you would catch all that warmth and you would actually ripen your fruit. So it's a very long-standing and very interesting horticultural technique.
Well, it certainly is. And they were beautifully framed. So we have the one specimen that was established, which Fran had spent years sort of resuscitating. I think it was about 50 years old, she said. Then the specimen here that we're looking at, she only planted, I think, in the garden, I think maybe 5-ish years ago. Yeah. I said, oh, so what was it, Fran? She said, oh, it was on the bargain trolley of like a big box nursery centre. So you don't need to be fancy. She just got a pear tree that was discounted because no one wanted it. It was a little bit shabby. And espaliered it, as you can see,
and
very superbly, beautifully done. So, Fran, thank you for saying hello and thank you for your time. Wonderful to see the espalier work at the Cloister Gardens, and I'm a little bit of a convert now, Stephen.
Well, and you're going to be in a very small garden, and just maybe there may be space to put in an espalier.
Maybe to torture something against the wall.
Oh, well, you'll learn to love it. It's like any art form. The better it is, the more you appreciate it. And if you've created it yourself, it takes it to a new level.
The other thing, Stephen, I think Fran has the best office/shed I've ever seen. It was so glamorous and beautiful with all these woven wicker baskets and objects. It was just the fantasy garden room.
Oh.
So I had an afternoon, top end of Manhattan, and just across the river from the Cloisters, literally, you can almost see it, is an amazing garden called Wave Hill. And I've had the book about Wave Hill Garden for years. Right. And again, I lived in New York for 6 years, never went. So I just Ubered across, took literally 4 minutes, and Wave Hill is amazing. So I didn't take much footage there because I didn't really have time. But there was one tree that made me laugh.
All right.
So here it is.
All right, so what was it about this tree?
Well, you can see it stopped me in its tracks. It is, what are we calling it? Pink, magenta. And it was in a little arbor of mixed interesting trees. So Wave Hill has some quite rare and unusual plants. But there was this literally pink tree and I was intrigued. Thought of you immediately, took a picture and I actually texted it to Stephen like, look at this.
Yeah.
It's a variegated tree, Stephen.
Yeah, I was going to say, you and variegations, I mean, really, of all the things for you to be sort of engaged with, a variegated beech of all things. So.
Yeah, but I guess this really demonstrates how useful variegation can be in a garden scheme, because it really stood out and it gave the trees either side more definition, and you also really saw the form of the variegated one.
Well, exactly.
It was stunning. So what is it?
Well, it's Fagus sylvatica, which is the European beech, and it's Purpurea tricolor, which is the cultivar. But I have to say, I was quite intrigued to see the images you took of this particular tree, because we grow what we would call tricolor here in Australia. But the one you've taken the photos of has a very broad variegated edge around most of the leaves, whereas here the tricolor we have tends to be very narrow. And I'm not suggesting we've got two quite different beeches, but what I am suggesting is that if you're propagating plants, particularly things like variegated plants, if you grafted from pieces off the tree that were highly variegated, you're likely to encourage that sort of behaviour in the tree. So you end up with a very heavily variegated young tree. And if you keep doing that, then you'll keep really highly variegated plants going. And I wonder whether in Australia we've actually had it deteriorate because some of the growers have been propagating from the less variegated wood on those trees, which has perpetuated that look. So I was very impressed, in fact, to see just how variegated that one was. And it's obviously got the same cultivar name. So as far as I can tell, it's the same one, but we've got an inferior form.
We've just got the dud second cousin.
Yeah, well, exactly.
So obviously then it grows well here, but what about sunlight in that leaf and our climate?
Surprisingly, it seems to be reasonably sun tolerant. I mean, I wouldn't take it to some of our really hot central areas in Australia, but in the sort of gardeny sort of coastal areas, I know of good copper beeches and tricolour beeches in areas like Geelong, which is a coastal area. They certainly grow around gardens in Melbourne. So they seem to cope surprisingly well.
Well, we have to keep our eyes out for a better form of that cultivar. All right, so the other thing I did whilst in New York was go to the New York Botanic Gardens, which again, lived there for 6 years, never did. And this is in the Queens. Now, I used to live in Brooklyn, so I went to the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens often, but never the New York Botanic Gardens. And I think the highlight for me was the conservatory, where there were just amazing tropical things in bloom, orchids and tropical plants a go-go, which was wonderful. But when I was kind of retracing my steps to exit through the gift shop, there was this tree. It was like, I don't know what it was like a green chandelier.
Yeah.
So again, I texted you. What is this tree, Stephen Ryan?
Well, it's an Asian wingnut, Pterocarya, and they get these amazing, winged nuts that sit in long dangling tassels that hang down. It looks almost like those velvet Victorian curtain tassels.
It did. It looked like tassels.
Yeah, and it's an amazing tree. It's quick growing. It's deciduous. The foliage is large and compound, rather like an ash tree's foliage.
Yeah.
In fact, you could probably mistake it a bit for an ash tree when it's not in flower. But when it produces these tassels, and I'm not quite sure how long it takes to start doing this, I sold one to a friend of mine locally.
So it's here, it's in Australia.
Oh yes, it's in Australia. Very tenuously, there's not much of it around. You can't get it very often. But I had a batch of them at one stage that a wholesaler sold to me. And the story goes that he got them from somebody else as young seedlings, and the seed had come in officially from overseas somewhere, but as something else. And when they germinated, they turned out to be Pterocaryas. And so they were sort of here, and so they were sort of sold. So they've gone out and about. And I sold this one about 6 or 7 years ago to a friend here in Macedon. It's making a substantial tree already. You've got that lovely sort of spready, candelabra sort of effect. It hasn't yet started to produce its catkins. So it'll be interesting to see whether we're getting close. But it's a substantial shade tree now after 6 or 7 years.
And this one in the New York Botanic Gardens was only planted in 1990, which is 35 years ago. And that tree looked massive to me.
Yeah.
I was really quite surprised. So just looking at the form, is that typical of that tree?
Oh, yes. Very rarely grows, as far as I can work out, as a single trunk tree with side branches. It tends to branch from quite low to the ground and then keep going out and out and out. You may well have to cut side branches off to lift the canopy up a bit. But once it's up there and doing its thing, you just let it go. So give it plenty of room because it's a biggish tree.
This is the thing. This is not a tree for your average garden. And I think in New York, they hadn't pruned much, so it was just this beautiful mound right down to the ground with these amazing tasseled flowers. So, Stephen, there you go.
Yeah, well, that was a lovely little trip you've taken me on.
A quick trip to New York City.
Yep.
So, the Met Cloister Garden, if you buy a ticket for the Metropolitan Museum, you can get into the Cloisters and vice versa. So you have to do it in the same day though, which is a bit tricky. But you can take the subway up to the Cloister Garden, very, very easy, and then an Uber across to Wave Hill, just across the water. The most beautiful, beautiful garden. The New York Botanic Gardens you can get to by subway or train as well.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, you obviously had a lovely day out.
Oh, I did. It was beautiful. It was beautiful to go botanising and to see variegation and think of you, Stephen.
Yeah, right. Well, all right. My turn will come.
It will indeed. Well, talking of which then, what could we do next week, Stephen?
Well, we could be going somewhere else in the world. I mean, we've got oodles of footage, so who knows? But I've enjoyed today's little visit to the Cloister Gardens. I've known about it for years, still haven't managed to get there myself, but I can live tenuously through your experience, I guess.
Wonderful. But if you do want to know what we're doing next week, you'll have to hit subscribe.
And don't forget to press the alert button and our Monday shorts. So if you've got a question you'd like to ask me, pop it in the comments section below and we'll get round to using it on our Monday shorts.
We will indeed. But until then, we look forward to seeing you next Friday.
Right. Bye all.